Do ye grit Shakara? Welcome back to the Mórrígan Academy podcast, where we explore the myths, magic and mysteries of Ireland's great battle goddess. If you've been drawn to the Mórrígan, chances are that you've asked this question: what myths should I read to understand her? And it's a solid question, and a very important one actually. Too often people try to connect with the Mórrígan without first looking at what the original sources actually say. And that's where the real wisdom is, because in the old text, the lore has survived across the centuries and it's still there, ready to be accessed by any of us today. So today we are looking at 3 key myths about the Mórrígan. These are Cath Maige Tuired Cunga, the First Battle of Moytura, Cath Maige Tuired, the Second Battle of Moytura, and Táin Bó Regamna, a more personal and fascinating encounter with the Mórrígan herself. Now, each of these gives us a deeper glimpse into who she is, what she does, and what she might want from us. So, let's get into it. First up, Cath Maige Tuired Cunga, the First Battle of Moytura, or the First Battle of Moytura at Cong. Cong is a place in County Mayo. So let's start at the beginning. This battle is a crucial turning point in Irish mythology, and it sets up everything that follows in the second battle, really. At this stage, the Tuatha Dé Danann, the divine race of Ireland, have just arrived in the land. They encounter a tribe called the Firbolg, the group who are ruling the land at the time, and they demand half the land for themselves. The Firbolg refuse and the battle begins. Now, there's a lot more to that story, the backstory, if you will, and it's definitely worth going to read it, but we'll power on. We're just trying to give a brief synopsis here just to ground you in this mythology. So you might be wondering, where does the Mórrígan come into this? Well, this is one of the first places she is mentioned in connection to warfare. She's listed among the great beings of the Tuatha Dé Danann, which means that she was present, but her specific role in this battle is less detailed than in the second. So what's important here is that it sets up the Mórrigan's presence as a force in war, not just a goddess who watches from the sidelines or, gives out sandwiches or anything, but as one who influences the course of events. This first battle is about claiming rightful rule, and that's a theme that will come up again and again with her. So sovereignty, power, and the balance of leadership. And if you want a little bit more insight into that, go back and listen to episode 2. Now, speaking of 2, we're going to move on to Cath Maige Tuired, which is the Second Battle of Moytura. And this is where things get really interesting, because by this point, the Tuatha Dé Danann are no longer fighting the Firbolg. Firbolg are still around, but they've kind of gone to ground a little bit, so they're not as much of a threat anymore. But the Tuatha, they now face a much greater threat, the Fomorians. The Fomorians were around before, and they've kind of come back into prominence in this particular myth. So these are a chaotic and destructive race, really, that seeks to dominate Ireland. They are possibly like otherworldly beings, or possibly sea pirates. Nobody's quite clear who or what they are, but they definitely have the supernatural amongst their ranks, just as the Tuatha Dé Danann do. Their king Balor, for example, is a monstrous figure with a deadly eye that can wipe out entire armies. Now, there's a couple of kings mentioned in this as well. The Fomorians, they would probably be made up of different tribes, so there might be a king in each tribe. There's a couple mentioned in the story, just in case that gets confusing for you. And what about the Mórrígan? She is very active in this battle. She doesn't just fight, but she shapes the war itself. She delivers prophecies of victory, she incites the warriors to battle, and she engages in magical warfare. And in one of her most significant moments, arguably, she actually defeats the Fomorian king Indech. She physically and magically takes him down, proving that her power isn't just about foresight or influence. This is a goddess who acts. Now, one of the most striking parts of this myth perhaps happens after the battle is won, when the Mórrígan stands over the battlefield and speaks a powerful rosc, that is R-O-S-C, a type of incantatory poetry. Very, very ancient, very connected with battle, with imbos, with, the poetic inspiration from the other world, and prophecy as well. So in this, she doesn't just declare victory. She shapes the future. She is giving two options for how things may turn out in the future, but she is really setting the terms of peace, of rulership, and of the land itself through this divinatory prophecy that she foretells, proclaims really at the end. And this shows us something critical, that the Mórrígan isn't just about destruction. She's about transformation. She ensures the right outcome, not just any outcome. And that's why we'd often see her not necessarily on kind of one side or the other. You'd see this particularly in another mythological tale, the Táin Bó Cúilne, where she's not necessarily fighting on the side of one or another in that war, that battle. She kind of weighs in where she's needed, right? And this is because, again, she wants the right outcome, not just any outcome. And that can be kind of a tricky thing to strategize towards, right? And for those of us who feel her calling today, that's really a lesson to take to heart. She doesn't just want warriors who fight. She wants people who can see what needs to be done and can make it happen. So again, we're acting. We're not just dithering. And for our third myth or tale, we have the Táin Bó Regamna. And this is the cattle raid of Regamna. This one is really fascinating because it gives us a look at how she interacts one-on-one with a demi-mortal hero. It's a prequel to the Táin Bó Cúilne, which I mentioned, the Great Cattle Raid, and it sets up the Mórrigan's complicated relationship with Cú Chulainn. Now, Cú Chulainn is not the big hero that everybody thinks he is. Within the mythology, if you actually read it correctly, what you're seeing is cautionary tales of what not to do, especially when it comes to interacting with a goddess, with a sovereignty goddess particularly. Because remember, sovereignty is all about right relationship, rightful leadership, rightful rulership, and a war leader would be part of that too. So it's not just the kings with the crowns, it's anybody who's in a leadership position. And in this tale, Cú Chulainn comes across a mysterious woman in a chariot with a cow. She tells him she is a Baive, a war crow, and that the cattle belong to her. Now, Cú Chulainn, full of himself as usual, threatens her, not realising who she is. And that's when the Mórrígan reveals herself. And she warns him that she will hinder him in battle, that he has just made an enemy of her. And true to her word, she later appears during his great battles, testing him, challenging him, and ultimately ensuring his downfall. She literally sits over his death. And this story teaches us a few things about the Mórrígan, and probably about Cú Chulainn, if this is the first time you're hearing any of this, about that particular bunny ears hero of Irish mythology. But the Mórrígan is not to be dismissed. Arrogance and disrespect towards her come with consequences. She doesn't just work in open warfare, she moves in very subtle ways through tests and warnings. And she's deeply tied to cattle and the land, and her power isn't just about fighting, but about resources, prosperity, and sovereignty. And again, that right relationship is crucial to understanding the Mórrígan. So all of this is a reminder that working with the Mórrígan is not about simply invoking her, it's about understanding what she stands for. She pushes people to be more than they are, but she doesn't tolerate ignorance or arrogance. So learning from the lore, we're going to break that down into 3 key points. If you're just starting out and you want to understand the Mórrígan properly, these are really must-read myths. So in Cath Maige Tuired Cunga, the First Battle of Moytura, this is where we see her first presence in war. In Cath Maige Tuired, the Second Battle of Moytura, this is where she actively shapes battle, sovereignty, and the future. And in Táin Bó Regamna, where she personally challenges a hero, supposed hero, and reveals her role in fate and her strategy, because it is that cow that she's bringing that actually causes the whole Táin Bó Cúilne. She is playing this crucial part. And these stories teach us that the Mórrígan is not just about war. Again, go back to episode 2 if you want more about that. She's about power, transformation, and consequence. And she doesn't just destroy, she ensures that the right order is established. Now, if you want to dive deeper into these myths, to have all these names written down in front of you, to have a little visual summary of it as well as just this podcast episode, I have got a present for you. It is a free guide called Who is the Mórrígan? 3 Essential Tales from Irish Mythology. And it breaks down these 3 stories, their meanings, and how they can help you connect with her today. It's full of exercises, hints, tips, all sorts of other goody stuff. So you can grab your copy at mórrígan.academy/tales, TALES -guide, GUIDE. Now that's it for today, Akara, my friend. If you found this useful, make sure to follow the Mórrígan Academy on socials. Make sure that you go to maybe Spotify or even YouTube and follow the Mórrígan Academy podcast. Leave me a review. It's very important for a new podcast starting out that we get reviews and downloads and all that good stuff. So tell a friend. And of course, if you want to explore more, check out our courses at the Mórrígan Academy. You'll see classes and courses listed along the top when you go to mórrígan.academy. So until next time, honour the lore, respect the Mórrígan, don't be a Cú Chulainn, and slán go fóill.